Here's one of the weird things about living a tiny house on wheels. They always move a little bit, even when they're parked. Oreo gets the zoomies, the house jiggles a bit. The washing machine on spin cycle, we're having a minor earthquake. One of the quirky things about living in a tiny house on wheels is that you will say things or experience things that you just don't come across in a normal house on foundations. When my daughter was still living here, she would come down out of her loft, down the ladder, and then initially she would jump from the last sort of rung sort of onto the floor. And that made the whole house shake a little bit. And so, I mean, I'd never have to say to anyone, don't jump off the ladder because you're making the house shake. But that's what happens in a tiny house on wheels. Despite the fact that the house is quite solid, it's on wheels, it has extra supports on the back and the front, but I've also got it supported on more spots underneath the house. But there's always that little bit of movement that can happen. And it doesn't take much to have that movement happen. So really, those of you who have a cat, you know, if the cat goes on the cat litter and it does the number 2, does a really good poo, they get the zoomies. And when she does the zoomies through the house and she does the parkour, on the couch, over the couch, off the couch, up the stairs, down the stairs, you know, that sort of running crazily around, the house moves. It's not like it's moving, but there's that little bit of a jiggle where you can feel that something's happening. Same with the washing machine. So the washing, and I think I've got it fairly limited based on how I've actually positioned the washing machine in my house. But when the washing machine gets to the spin cycle, it really feels like a minor earthquake. And I know because I've been through a minor earthquake, except that minor earthquake just went one little movement, whereas this just moves constantly a little bit throughout the spin cycle. Just somebody else walking around in the house will give it a sense of movement. Of course, when I walk through the house and I'm on my own, I don't notice it, but I can make the house move a little bit by moving side to side. I don't know if that just showed on the camera, but I moved a little bit side to side and I could feel it. So, you know, and the other thing that makes the house move a little bit is when there's really strong winds, and especially if they come from that way, so the big side of the house, so it gets a really good whack when there's a wind gust, and for some reason when there are wind gusts, that's where the wind is coming from. So, and I especially feel it when I'm upstairs in the loft. The first couple of times that happened, you can imagine I was a bit worried because I thought, oh my goodness, am I going to topple over? And then I realized that by the time I moved in, Tiny had been here for 2 years already with quite a bit of wind, and it had never blown over. So I don't think it's going to happen. But you can definitely feel it, and more so when I'm in the loft than when I'm downstairs. Now, it has a few consequences. A house is not, most houses and the way houses are built, they're not supposed to move that much. And so there's some things that I've noticed over the last 2 years that have happened that I go, oh yeah, that's because of movement. So one of the things is that that the house just stops being level. Not majorly, but just that little bit, that it's just a bit out of whack. And I usually know that it's only happened once, and then I worked out what was going on and I could fix it. But I notice it when the door starts to get stuck a little bit, so it jams a tiny bit. So instead of just easily open and closing, it just starts to Just there's something rubbing. And then I get my big level out and I put it on the floor and I go, oh, the house is a little bit out of whack. And especially when there's a lot of wind and it has also been raining a lot. So then I need to get someone, usually my daughter Malu, and then together we have to try and adjust. It's hard work to crack up one of the, some of the support things. I don't know what they're called, stabilizers, I think. And then when it's level again, then everything is hunky-dory. The other thing that happened, at some point I had a leak in the shower and I didn't know where it was coming from, and it was just water coming from under the base, the shower base, and I was going, where is it? What's happening? And I had a few things that could be wrong. It could be the taps could be leaking behind the wall of the shower. That was my or the where the washing machine is. I thought maybe that is leaking, and I was hoping that was what it was that the silicone on the shower base against the wall, that there was a tiny little hole. And I tried different things to work out what it was, and that's what it was. And I think it's just because although silicone is flexible, it doesn't necessarily cope well with the amount of movement that the tiny house seems to have at times. Not a deal breaker at all in terms of living in a tiny house, but it's one of those things you just need to be prepared for, that it does move. So I just check regularly if it's still level. I check my silicone definitely in the shower basin regularly to make sure that it hasn't sort of slightly come off the walls. And I have some cracks where my wall sheets meet up, and I nicely filled that with gap filler, and I've noticed that in some places the gap filler has cracked a bit, so it's probably not flexible enough. So that's one of the things that going forward I probably have to fix up and find a more flexible gap filler. And I just check my shower basin, the silicone every time I clean. I make sure that I check if it's still all hunky-dory. So really, it's one of those things you need to expect from living in a house that moves a little. And I've learned, especially at night when it's windy, it's actually quite nice. It kind of, the wind, the slight movement makes me kind of, rocks me to sleep. But it is odd when you come out of a normal house to notice that your house moves. I hope you enjoyed that little sort of quirkiness about the tiny house on wheels. If you have any questions about living in a tiny house on wheels, or you want to know more about certain funny, quirky other things, let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, then hit like and subscribe, because there are more tiny house on wheels truths coming up. Thanks for watching. Bye.